Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. I know that by the title of this video, you can tell that this is going to be my labor and delivery story for baby number 2, meaning I had baby number 2. If you're not subscribed, I guess you wouldn't necessarily know that, but I have already posted my announcement video here on my channel, and I also mainly update on Instagram, so if you don't follow me on Instagram, it's always linked down below, but that's where I have more daily updates in my stories, and I post a lot over there. But I figured I would kind of sit down and do a full labor and delivery story. I did it with my son, and I figured I would do it with this one too, because I love hearing people's stories, especially when I am pregnant. I love hearing them, so I figured I would do it again over here. Please ignore that I look crazy. I wasn't even going to bother filming this for a while because I am recovering currently. I am only 6 days postpartum right now, but in the end, I was just like, you know what, if anyone is here to watch this video, you definitely probably don't care what I look like, and you probably don't care if I have makeup on or clean hair or anything like that. So I figured I would just sit down and film this video makeup free. So this is what real life looks like at 6 days postpartum. But I will do a postpartum update at some point, maybe around the 6-week mark, and share my postpartum and breastfeeding journey and stuff like that. So definitely subscribe and stay tuned. But getting right into this, I have all the timestamps on my phone. This delivery was much different than with my son. If you have been around since then, you already know that. But if you haven't, I do have a labor and delivery story and vlog and everything with him. This baby, I didn't even get the chance to do an actual labor vlog, so that's why I'm still doing a story. But I'll link those down below if you want to check out how crazy his labor and delivery was, because I had a really hard, long delivery. We had a lot of complications, and I had a really hard recovery, and this one is kind of a healing, a very healing journey compared to Hayes. So baby number 2, her name is Adeline, and obviously she is our daughter, but basically starting here, okay, I started having contractions really early, around 35 weeks. They definitely kind of switched to being contractions. However, me personally, I have a very high pain tolerance. It takes a lot for me to really show pain, and with my son, I was still happy really far into labor. So I'm not a good judge of if contractions are real versus Braxton Hicks, to be honest, up until transition time. And that kind of plays in a little bit later here. So I wrote that around 35 plus 4, I actually kind of got a little bit sick, and I was kind of worried at that point, but I felt better the next day. But I was up all night, I remember, at that point. And then I got checked at my 36-week appointment. So I got checked, and I was 3 centimeters and 75%, 70 to 75% effaced. It depends on the doctor. So I was 3 centimeters, about 70%. Which sounded really good for 36 weeks. So I was like, all right, cool. Maybe I'll go into labor around 37 weeks. That's when I went into labor with my son. That was totally what I was hoping for. And my contractions actually picked up a lot over the next couple of days. So at 36 days plus 3, because at my 36-week appointment, I had been having contractions since then. But again, I'm not a good judge on if they're real versus Braxton Hicks, because I have a lot of contractions, but they don't really bother me. So it's really hard to say. But I was definitely having pressure and stuff. So my doctor actually did have us go in to labor and delivery to get checked, just to make sure I wasn't in technically preterm labor, because I hadn't reached 37 weeks yet. And they determined I was still the same progression. Nothing had changed, so I was okay. And that was about it. They did want to give me steroids, but I actually declined, just given that I was already 36 and a half weeks, and it didn't seem like I was going to go into labor yet anyways. So I did decline that. I just prefer not to have extra of things. So then I went to my doctor's appointment at 37 plus 1, and I was still 3 centimeters and still like 70% effaced, even though I'd been walking every day. I've been doing a lot of things, my red raspberry leaf tea, my bouncing on my ball, just tons and tons of things to try to hope I'd progress during that week, and I hadn't. So I went home thinking, okay, like there's no way this is happening soon. I'm gonna go all the way to my like C-section date at 39 weeks. That's what I thought, honestly, because we did plan a C-section at 39 weeks if I made it that far, for a lot of personal reasons that had to do with my first birth. But here's where labor starts. So the next day, the very next day, at 37 weeks plus 2 days, that's the exact same day that I went in with my son. Ironically, both kids, I went in on the exact same day to the hospital. But I was bouncing on, well, first, the day started completely normal. I will say that. My husband was at drill, so he wasn't home. My mom had been staying up with us for a couple of days while he was at drill to help out with my son, just because I was so pregnant. So my mom and grandmother were both up here, but my grandmother was home, but my mom was at my brother's house, like 20 minutes away. So I woke up with my son. We actually went to Dunkin' to get coffee because I didn't have any coffee at home. The day was completely normal. I did not feel different at all in the least. But I went to go bounce on my ball, and I remember he wanted to go play outside, and I was like, no, we gotta wait a little while. I'm gonna bounce my ball for a little bit, and then when Nanny comes down, we'll go outside. So I sat on my ball for probably like 20-ish minutes. It wouldn't have been more than a half hour when I felt this like weird little trickle of something really suddenly. And my first thought was just that I had to pee, and honestly, if I had any hope, I would just hope it was my mucus plug or something. I definitely didn't think it was my water, but in that like 2 seconds that I thought about getting up to go pee, I felt the craziest gushes ever. It literally was like, after the little trickle, I had like a second to think, and then it was just like an explosion. Well, I was sitting on this ball, so it didn't really come out right away because I was sitting on a ball, obviously, but it was literally like 4 giant gushes. And I was like, oh my god, that is my water. There is no way it is anything else. It was a lot. And it was like multiple, just like separate gushes of a lot of fluid. Like it was a lot. And I was soaked. So first I called my mom because she was only 20 minutes away at my brother's house, and then I called Glenn so that he could come home right away, and then I went upstairs to change and to call my doctor and let her know that my water had just broken at 37 weeks, obviously, and that I was going to come into the hospital. So she said to come in right away. She encouraged me to just go right to the hospital, not to like labor at home or anything. So my husband got home, let's see, about 2 minutes after my mom. I basically told him, it was weird, I wasn't having contractions, but I just told him, whoever gets home first, we're going to the hospital, and you can meet me there if you're not home first, because I just wanted to be at the hospital. Like, I guess I think I had this like subconscious feeling that things were going to happen a lot quicker than they did with my son, because even though I wasn't having contractions, I just like wanted to get to the hospital. Like I just had a weird feeling and a weird pressure, and like I just wanted to go. Like I literally, I went out and said goodbye to my son while he was playing with my grandmother, and kind of snuck out quickly so that he wouldn't see me leave. And I sat in the car waiting for whoever came home first. So Glenn got there, and we arrived at the hospital at 11:52, and they took me back to do like my COVID test, make sure that my water had really broken, which like it had, I knew it had, and all of that stuff. And then at about 12:40 is when my doctor came in. She checked me. I was still 70% effaced, but I was 4 centimeters, so I had a little bit of progression from that appointment the day before, obviously, which probably happened literally right as my water broke, honestly. So at 12:40, I was 4 centimeters, 70%. They admitted me, and we walked down to my actual labor and delivery room, and like right as we hit that room was when contractions kind of started for me, and it was quick from this point. So this was at 12:40. She was born at 4:08, so we only had about 3 hours before she was born. So my contractions picked up pretty quick. At first I was going to get in the shower for a little bit and try to wait on an epidural for a while, just because I was scared that my progression wouldn't keep going. So she said if I went on the monitor for about 15 minutes, then she would let me off the monitor for 45. So I sat down in the bed, and during that 15 minutes was when everything picked up and started going really quickly, because suddenly I was having the most intense contractions like ever, and they were getting more intense with each one, and I just like knew that this was different. And I didn't feel them in the front at all. They actually were only in my lower back, like super 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 lower back, like almost at your butt, but like just the back. So before too long, I just decided to go for an epidural instead. I basically just kind of hoped that I was progressing, but they were just so intense that I knew that getting in the shower wasn't going to help that quickly. It just was not going to happen. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to get my epidural instead. Whatever. And she was like, okay, we'll get everything started for that. So he came in and I got the epidural at 2:55. She was born 1 hour after this. So my epidural was done at 2:55 and I got checked right after, and I actually was now at a 7. Also keep in mind, my contractions were literally like 2 minutes apart from the start. Like the moment I walked into the labor and delivery room and they started, they were like 2 minutes apart the entire time from the very moment they started. So they were still like 2 minutes apart, and I was suddenly a 7 right after my epidural. So this was about 2 hours after my first check when I was a 4. So within 2 hours, I went from a 4 to a 7. And she was like, wow, good thing you got your epidural, because, you know, it definitely could have been too late for it. And ironically, I think it was too late for it because it never actually fully worked. So I got the epidural, and I probably got 20 minutes or so of like pain relief, and it never fully kicked in. I definitely still felt the contractions, but they just weren't as painful, but they were definitely still uncomfortable enough that like I was like, okay, I was hoping I was gonna take a nap, and like I'm not gonna take a nap, obviously, like it wasn't gonna happen. But I probably only got about 20 minutes of actual relief from it, and I started feeling all of my contractions literally in my butt. Like literally, it wasn't even my back anymore. It was straight up like my butt. It was so, so weird. And it was a really intense pressure. And like there was pain, but it was definitely a pressure kind of pain. That's very different from anything you've ever felt in your life. So, I just knew that it was different. It was weird. The epidural obviously was not working. She came in and did try to give me another dose, and she was like, you know, do you want me to check you again, or do you want like maybe the doctor to come back and see if there's an issue with the catheter and the epidural, because maybe he could fix it and get you better relief, or you know, I could check you and see if anything's happened. And it's funny because I felt really dramatic. Like I was like, I don't want to be dramatic, like you just checked me and I was a 7, you know. Like I don't know. And then I was like, you know what though, just check me, just do it, why not? Because I didn't want to waste the time of getting a second epidural if it wasn't going to work anyway, you know. Like I don't know, I had a feeling that I was going to be pushing, I think, because of the pressure that I had. So she checked me, and between 2:55 to when she checked me at 3:52, about an hour later, I was totally progressed. And I could have been like that for a while, because there was a good like 20-minute span there that I was just like not sure what I wanted to do, but we knew that it was, I mean, the epidural hadn't worked. Like I was just in so much like of this weird pressure-ish pain that was just really, really just an intense pressure more than anything. So I was a 10 literally within that hour. And she was like, okay, you know, if you're ready to push, we can push, or, you know, if you do want more medicine, we could wait. Just, you know, depends if you're ready to push. And I was like, no, let's do it. So we decided I was going to push. The doctor came in at 4, and this baby was actually born in less than 10 minutes. She was born at 4:08. So it was really, really quick. We had the doctor who rushed in the room and let me start pushing literally as she was like getting her stuff on. We had one nurse and then obviously my husband. And I mean, when she came in for me to start pushing, her head was already like right there. Like she could feel her head and she was like, all right, let's go. So we did like every round. I think it was like 4 or 5 rounds total of pushing. And she just said I could go whenever I wanted to, whenever I felt like it. And literally within like 3 or 4 pushes, she was crowning. Her head was out within like the next push from when she was crowning. And then suddenly she was just totally out and on top of me. Like, it's such a crazy thing because it was so quick that I won't, like, I can't even really explain it because it was so quick, like, especially compared to my son. She was literally born in 8 minutes of pushing, and it was a really good experience. And I will say that pushing completely, it does relieve that pressure that you feel or that pain, whatever it is. It's remedied by the pushing aspect. And with my son, I didn't really have like the urge to push because my epidural was really strong with him, where with this one, since I basically didn't have an epidural, I felt the need to push. But yeah, I mean, she was out super quick and everything was done pretty much. I didn't have a lot of bleeding at all. I did have some stitches, but I think it's because she was born so quickly. Literally from the time my water broke to the time that she was born was 5 hours, and from the time my actual contractions started to when she was born was about 3.5 hours, which I just think is so insane, at least to me. I know people have way crazier deliveries, but for me, compared to my son, that was the craziest thing ever for me, and it honestly was a really awesome experience. I loved the care that I was provided at my hospital by my doctors and nurses. And everything just went really well, and that's all I can really say about it, I guess. I do plan to do like a postpartum update to share with you guys about postpartum recovery, breastfeeding, all of that kind of stuff. I'll do that in a couple of weeks. But yeah, that is my labor and delivery story for baby number 2. It's simple and maybe boring, but also like kind of crazy and quick and fun, and it went really well. So now I know though, when I have a 3rd child, that if my water breaks, I'm probably going to sprint to the hospital because I didn't really have time to get an epidural that was going to work. And if I would have stayed at home very long, I would have been pushing like in the triage room. Like, so crazy to me. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video, you guys. I need to go take care of my children and also just kind of lay around and recover. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.